I've been solo queuing Marvel Rivals all the way up to Grandmaster this season, and I've realized 5 weird tips that have helped me rank up faster. And they seem weird, but they actually really help more than you'd first think. The first of which being, yes, that big thumbnail moment. Don't click the one more round button. And there are actually a few really interesting reasons why you don't want to do this. So let's break down why you don't want to press this, and then we'll get into the other tips that can also help you that you'd be surprised work quite well. So there are a couple major points why you don't want to click this one more round button, especially if you've just come off of a loss or 2 or 5. Clicking this has a bit of an issue. Firstly, if you click that one more round button, chances are all of your teammates who have just clicked it as well are more likely to be queued into your next game. The most likely chance you'll ever be playing with your teammates again is that very next game where you're both matchmaking at the exact same time in the exact same rank. Now, if you had really good teammates, sure, go for it. But if you feel like you want to re-roll things and have a better chance with a different team because you felt like maybe a couple players on your team were a bit slacking, waiting just a little minute will mean that you're very unlikely to get those same players in your match again. Or even worse, if there's someone on the enemy team that's just absolutely stomping you, well, you might end up going up against them again if you click that button right away. Now, that's a pretty straightforward reason, but there's more reasons why you wouldn't want to click this one more round button. The next reason being, if you've just come off of a lose streak and you just go straight back into the next game, you're not going to have much better results. You're going to go into it frustrated, tired, and probably underperforming because of your past matches. And if you just click that one more round button, you'll have to go straight into the next match without giving yourself time to decompress and reset yourself. So this is a very dangerous button. Clicking this is almost a one-way trip to D-ranking, so be very careful with pressing it if you're on a loss streak. Now, there are even some cases where I would say don't press this button even if you're on a winning streak. One of the biggest issues with playing Marvel Rivals and consistently ranking up is this game can be extremely mentally fatiguing. What I mean by that is when you're playing an actual match of Marvel Rivals, you have very little downtime. If you were to compare it to like a Battle Royale game or an arena shooter where, you have time to travel without shooting, this game doesn't have that much of that. You're pretty much healing or shooting or using your abilities like all of the time. And if you're not doing that, you're losing out on potential damage and you could be losing your teammate the game. So if you keep playing game after game after game, it gets extremely mentally fatiguing, more than a normal shooter game would, and you're not giving yourself some time to reset your mind. Not only does that mean you can't have moments to go grab a bit of water or go for a toilet break or any of these important bodily functions, you are just going to get yourself wound up to the point where you're not performing as well. Everyone needs a break, and even if it's just a few minutes to get up and walk about a bit to just refresh your brain after each and every match, I'd really suggest doing this before clicking one more round, because otherwise you absolutely are going to mentally fatigue yourself. Even if you're playing amazingly, it won't take long before you've played maybe 7 or 8 games in a row and you're not doing as well. Maybe your accuracy is starting to drop off a bit. Your decision making is starting to fall off. You're not noticing as many small minor details that you need to play as well as you'd like to. It really as simple as just taking a moment to breathe, taking a quick break, and then coming back refreshed and stronger. So those 3 things, honestly, really are why you shouldn't click the one more round button. And knowing that and avoiding pressing this button and just having a little bit of a break between matches changes everything. And this is what helped me to rank up. I was honestly sitting there game after game after game, going maybe like 15 games in a row without really even thinking about taking a break. And then I'm suddenly realized how mentally fatigued I am at the end of it. This fixes everything. Don't click one more round, go back to the menu, take a bit of a breather, and then jump back into the matchmaking like that. Much better way of doing it, and you'll be surprised at how much this can change your performance. The next weird tip that will actually make you win a lot more games in Marvel Rivals is to stand still and don't move about. Sounds weird, but you don't always need to strafe around and jump around like crazy. From me, my perspective coming from Apex Legends, where movement feels like everything, it was no surprise really how long it took me to realize in Marvel Rivals that movement isn't everything in this game. Accuracy and aim are far more important, positioning is far more important, and sometimes just staying still or moving a very small amount to make sure that my aim is on point and hitting the exact shots I need to is far more advantageous than trying to move around and strafe and dodge bullets. Because what happens when you do that, if you strafe around too much and move around too much, your accuracy is most likely going to drop. And also, your supports, which are right behind you trying to heal you, they're going to have a harder time trying to heal you up. Now, I'm not saying stay still all the time and don't move about, because then yes, you will be an easy target for the enemies. But if you've come from any other shooter game, you'll probably find out that you're moving a bit too much than you really need to in this game, and just slowing down your movement a little bit may help you improve your aim massively and completely change the flow of gameplay. What I'd started to do is if I'm trying to track shots with someone, say like Punisher, or trying to hit high value shots with Hela, I'll kind of just stop occasionally to make sure I can hit those last little shots to make sure I secure a kill, and then I'll move about more when I need to after that. Like stopping my movement to be extra accurate can help. And also, I realized that you can strafe just a little bit left and right to sort of micro adjust your aim. So if your aim is not quite on target, instead of trying to move your actual aim, whether it's a joystick or your mouse, to counter that, you can move just a tiny bit to sort of counter strafe into the target. So I use movement mostly as a way to help correct my aim, and then the movement is good. I'm moving just enough to dodge bullets without really thinking about it too much, and I'm not moving too much to the point where it's actually negatively impacting my aim or negatively impacting my support's ability to heal me. The next weird Marvel Rivals tip that can actually help you win more games is to stop shooting so much. Now, this one is going to need a little bit more of a, I suppose, grain of salt before we delve into this. Yes, you're supposed to shoot. The more damage you get out onto the enemy team generally gets you better results, right? You want to try and do as much as you possibly can within the time period that you have in each match to stop the enemy team, to kill them, to get your ult up and all that stuff. But there becomes a limit at this point where you may just be mindlessly shooting into tanks or even into duelists that are just constantly getting healed up by the enemy team, and you're not getting any results out of it. If you're just sitting there and just shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, what happens is you're giving the tanks their ultimate, you're giving the supports on the enemy team the ultimates, and you're actually kind of helping the enemy team get more ultimate economy over you. Now, if you're charging your ultimate and you're going to use your ult to actually win fights, then sure, go ahead. But sometimes stop trying to just shoot too much. Slow it down a bit and think about how you can perhaps position yourself to use your shooting to actually secure kills. Like if you're just constantly firing loads and loads of bullets into a tank, it's not going to do anything. However, if you just adjust your positioning a little bit to try and get an angle on the backline where the supports are and try and shoot them, it changes things massively. So just being a bit more conscious of what you're shooting and why and what objective you're trying to go for by shooting changes everything, as opposed to just mindlessly shooting because you feel like you need to do something. The next one I think is massively underrated in Marvel Rivals and I think in all multiplayer games. Glaze your teammates. Glaze your teammates like crazy. And what I mean is, if they do something good, like get a good ult off or do good healing, say thanks in chat. Say nice ult. Say nice heals. Whatever you can to bring your team's morale up is going to help you massively. Thing is, it's going to be about a 50-50 win rate. If you're all solo queuing across both sides, it's going to be roughly a 50-50 win rate in ranked. You're going to be of a certain skill level, and for most games, when it averages out, the enemy team is also going to be at roughly that skill level as well. But you can elevate your team's chance by any little means possible to increase your win rate. And sometimes that's as simple as just making your teammates feel happier and better about themselves. So glazing your teammates and telling them how good they are can change the flow of gameplay massively because your teammates suddenly feel confident enough to do the things they need to do to win the game. If you don't give your teammates support and positive encouragement, then sometimes if people on your team end up dying or underperforming, they start yelling at each other, and then you got this opposite experience where suddenly your team is underperforming because everyone's mad at each other, which happens far too often than you can even count at this point. I'm sure it's happened to you a million times. It's happened to me, but just being a bit positive, not like over the top, but just giving some compliments in chat here and there can really change the flow of gameplay. Now, it's really funny that I want to end this on the final tip, which is to not glaze your teammates. And what I mean by that is sometimes if your teammates are doing really badly, you kind of need to point it out because sometimes they may not realize that they're the ones doing badly. If you're noticing that someone on your team is, I don't know, 10 to 15 deaths already and they're obviously the ones underperforming, you got to tell them. You got to just say in chat and not be like rude about it. Just say, hey, do you want to maybe switch with me? Or like, do you want to maybe try a different character? Maybe that will help. There's a polite way of saying, look, you're having a bad game. Maybe you need to change things up. And usually it is like, my best advice is to ask that underperforming player if they want to switch off to like what they want to play instead. Usually it will be like a DPS player who's playing support or tank and they're struggling. Just going in chat and being like, hey, do you want to swap roles with me? Could end up getting better results sometimes because that weak point in your team, if you can fix that, then you're less likely to lose that game. When you do have a weak point in the team that feels extremely, extremely weak, then fixing that may be your only hope to stop it being an unwinnable match. So there we have it. I think 5 major sort of weird tips that are surprisingly effective at helping you win more games. And these are the things that have helped me as a solo queue player to get to Grandmaster. And so far, even in Grandmaster, they're working to keep me ranking up. So let me know how you find these tips and if you've got any of your own weird tips yourself. And I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio.